Well, with Kiev now a battleground, so it seems. Let's discuss what is at stake with William Engdahl, geopolitical analyst and author of Full Spectrum Dominance. So, William, Yanukovych, there he is. He's got many protesters saying they want him to sign that deal with the EU. He's saying that will come with economic damage for the country. What are his choices now? What are his options?
Well, first of all, I think it's quite right about the economic damage with the special association with the European Union. This was a Washington agenda and has been for more than 6 years. The EU simply acting as a proxy for Washington to essentially strip Ukraine from Russia and weaken and isolate Russia even more. So the stakes, the geopolitical stakes are huge in this. The police, the Ukrainian police made a colossal blunder, the same that Milosevic made back in Yugoslavia, and the same blunder that Bashar al-Assad made at the onset of the protests in Syria, and that is to react with state violence, because that is exactly what the opposition was hoping and praying for, that they would lose their cool and give a red flag to the protesters to come out en masse, and that's precisely what's happened. So I think,
William, isn't there, sorry to ask you, that surely isn't there a genuine belief that the EU is better for Ukrainians? Otherwise, we wouldn't see hundreds of thousands of them protesting right now. Why are they wrong?
Well, there's a genuine belief of many children in Santa Claus, but that doesn't mean Santa Claus exists. Quite seriously, the protesters, people get on the streets out of emotion, not out of reasoned logic in most cases. In Tahrir Square in Egypt, the emotion was freedom, democracy, and that was manipulated by the backers of the Muslim Brotherhood, Morsi and et al., to bring the Brotherhood into power and discard these legitimate student democratic protests. I suspect that the same networks that created the Orange Revolution back in 2003-04, and that is the National Endowment for Democracy, Freedom House, various front organizations of the U.S. State Department are quite active in this protest and trying to steer it and build it in a very professional, guided way. Another kind of color revolution, if you will, Mach 2 for Ukraine. And hopefully the government starts responding a little bit more intelligently. The police chief the head of national police has apologized for the excessive use of force and violence, but it's going to take much more than that.
And what do you make of the fact that European MPs have been seen talking to opposition members here, actually in Kiev? Is that in effect maybe them stirring up trouble and perhaps even an attack on a country's sovereignty? I mean, should they actually be doing that right now?
No, well, the Speaker of the Lithuanian Parliament, among others, and she made a blatant intervention in the internal affairs of a sovereign state, Ukraine, several days ago, and hailing the European Union membership for Ukraine, etc. So this is a major push by the West, by NATO essentially, to create chaos in Ukraine and weaken the ties with Russia.
Sure, so very briefly, where does that put EU-Russia ties now? Because both are very important trading partners. They've got a lot to lose here, haven't they?
Well, they do, and I go back to my initial statement. This is not the EU as EU. This is Washington acting through the cat's paw of the European Union, through political networks in Brussels and so forth. And Cameron, Hollande's government in France, Merkel to a limited extent, because the Germans are much more sensitive about good relations with Moscow. But this is a geopolitical agenda. It's much bigger than Ukraine. It's much bigger than tens or hundreds of thousands of protesters on the street. But I think sober heads have to prevail in the situation and rationally discuss what's at stake. And if there was police violence, they should be punished for it. And the population should realize Ukraine has a huge problem, I know from Ukrainian friends, with state corruption, with business corruption on all levels. They should begin addressing that as well, but it's not going to happen because the opposition comes back in there as corrupt as the people in there now. It's just a different left-handed corruption versus right-handed, I suppose.
William, thanks very much indeed. Great to get your thoughts. William Engdahl, geopolitical analyst and author of Full Spectrum Dominance, live here on RT. Thank you very much indeed.